Hey everybody, today we're debating, is atheism reasonable? And we're starting right now. All right, glad to see everyone here. My name is Erika and I'm guest modding today for James and the rest of the modern day debate crew. So is atheism reasonable or is it not? That's the discussion we're having. And we're going to go ahead and give everyone, our debaters, a chance to kind of let everyone know what they're about, shill for their channels if they have it. And we're going to jump right into some openers because that's the general format of today. 10-minute openers for each team, followed by 50, 60 minutes of open discussion, and then 10-minute closers for each team, followed by Q&A. So if you have any questions for our debaters, shoot them into the comments, and at Gutsick Gibbon, that's me, I'm going to be collecting them and compiling them so that we can get the debaters' hot takes on all of the questions that you have for them. Since we're going with the affirmative giving their openers first, we'll let our affirmative debaters go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and switch over to Praise and John, and then we'll get into the opener. So by all means, Amy, Brenda, let us know what you're about.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Amy Newman. I am an agnostic, atheist, anti-theist, which is a whole mouthful. And I like doing a whole bunch of, I would say, skeptic-based comedy out at my channel. And for today, I'm going to start off with my presentation.
All right. All right, Brenda, your turn. Hit us up.
I'm Brenda Van Assen. And I'm here to debate the positive atheism. I believe that there's no good reason to believe in God, so I positively believe that atheism is true. I have a separate website from my usual one called Brenda Debates. The link should be in the description. It's just random. It's not serious. It's just random me talking to other people on the intertubes.
There you go. Sweet. Okay, Praise John, whichever one you guys wants to open up first for introductions, by all means.
I'm John Maddox. My channel is Logical, Plausible, Probable. Most of you here on MDD probably recognize me at this point. I've done quite a few debates here, including with our lovely moderator host tonight, the one and only Erika, also known as Gutsick Gibbon. Looking forward to this debate tonight, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation and be able to actually have good dialogue on which is the more rational, reasonable, logical, plausible, and probable conclusion for our existence.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, John and I have had a couple of conversations. We get on all right, John?
But most of the time.
Yeah, things get spicy, but that's how debates go. So, all right, Praise, hit us up. Sweet. All right, we got all the openers checked off, so we're going to go ahead and let the affirmative team, whichever individual would like to go first, Amy or Brenda, and jump right in because I'm raring and ready to get to the discussion. I love hearing the openers, but everyone also enjoys a good open discussion. So whoever wants to launch things off, I've got the timer all ready to go here. I'll let you know when you're at about 4 minutes, since you get 10 minutes for each team. So just so that you can keep kind of track of your timing. So let's get started.
Did you want to go first, Brenda, or do you want me to go first?
I'm kind of nervous, so could you please
You're fine.
go first? It's been a long time.
And so I'm going to start screen sharing. Do I have to do it myself, or does someone else have to?
Yeah, I'll push it through for you.
All right.
Yeah, Praise is the puppet master on this one.
Always appreciate it. So just tell me when it's up and I'll begin.
Yeah, I'll just start the timer on your first sentence once we can see your presentation.
That's good.
One day it'll show up, right, Praise?
Yeah, it's so.
Hey, Praise, people in chat are saying that your sound wasn't coming through.
Oh, really? I think
Uh-oh.
that's rectified now. I was on mute. I muted myself.
Happens
Oh man,
to
yeah, they
and all of us.
the best.
So yeah, Amy, you need to go to the bottom and hit share screen, and then connect that to your presentation.
Sure. Give me 1 second.
All right. Yeah, it should pop by. The screen sharing is always the awkward part, right? There's always that everyone's always raring and ready to go. We get all hyped, and then you gotta wait for the screen to share.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Is Atheism Reasonable? A Case for Atheism in the Affirmative. So what is positive atheism? A term used to contrast ourselves with purely negative atheism, or the notion that there are no good reasons to believe in a God, and thus we should not believe in them. The positive, affirmative, or strong atheist also believes this is the case, but that there are a multitude of other factors that would negate a theistic claim altogether. Does this mean I can prove to 100% certainty that no gods exist or will exist? Well, no, but I don't think we can do that with any claim. Instead, it means we can disprove many of the common and traditional deities. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the big monotheistic religions, but the problems I bring up would apply to a polytheist as well. So let's start with some terms. Currently, all that we know about is the natural world. Any concept of a supernatural is incoherent and not within a true dichotomy, which would be supernatural and non-supernatural. If something outside the natural world were discovered, it would either be non-natural or our view of the natural world would expand. If this being is natural, we should be able to test for them in the real world. So why is this God hiding from us? The one thing strong and weak atheists agree on is that these gods seem to be hide-and-seek world champions. The specific theist will tell us that this deity did reveal themselves. However, they never seem to do so under scientific means, instead relying on poor witness testimony from thousands of years ago to convince us. Which is why there seems to be a heavy correlation with miracles not occurring the longer we get away from a time which such events were claimed to have happened. Also, why does this God's powers appear puny? Some theists claim their God is unable to lie, making him weaker than a Labrador retriever. They claim he's all-powerful, but this God seems unable to show up in the physical realm. Thus, this deity is about as real as someone who's never kissed a girl telling you their girlfriend lives in Canada, but you can never meet them. Is this God alive? The most common definition of a being alive is having a metabolism and replicating. If this deity doesn't have replicating cells, it's not alive. So did life come from this non-alive being? Also, let's talk about the word being. What would make a thing a being? Does it make choices like other agents? Does it have methods of communication like other agents? Does it have a means of reproduction? Some claim this God is a male. Do they have male genitals? Do they have a male chromosome? If they lack sexual organs altogether, how did they mate, like the event with Yahweh and Mary? Is this God conscious? The only conscious agents that we're aware of is the branch that houses animals, dealing with a brain, spinal cord, and a complex system of emotions. Most of life is not conscious, and all current evidence suggests this takes a physical medium to happen. So if this God is spaceless, timeless, not alive, and not conscious, I have a very specific word for them. Non-existent.
It's about 4 minutes, just to let you know.
Okay, but what about theism on the cultural and societal level? Well, why should we step away from theistic claims and towards a positive atheism? Well, I have an often used quote I think sums up my point nicely. With or without religion, good people can behave well and bad people can do evil. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion. The 9/11 hijackers thought they were holy and righteous people doing God's work. We can assume that they went to their death thinking they were outstanding human beings. Well, how could this be? Would someone die for a lie? Yes, they would. Though more correctly, they would die based on the wrong information given. If someone thinks they're about to punish sinners and receive a reward in heaven, it's easy to see how they could be twisted into such horrible concepts. Thus, we can only have one choice. With such little evidence for theism and with mounting evidence in the opposite direction, we should throw off these forms of superstitions just like our forefathers did. Only then are we going to move forward as a scientific, literate populace ready to tackle the problems of today. I believe we, as a species, are ready to do so. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. That was about 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll set that as our kind of flexible limit for an opener. I'll just, as usual, I'll let everyone know at 4. So Brenda, if you'd like to go ahead, by all means, once you start, I'll just hit begin on the timer and we'll get going. Oh, I think you're muted, Brenda.
Okay, so my position is that I believe that, for instance, there's a proposition that God exists. Theism asserts that God exists is true. Atheism asserts that God exists is false. And I assert that I believe that P is false because I lack sufficient evidence or conviction for me to justify believing that P is true. I'm a naturalist, and so I believe that naturalism is the best explanation for the world around us, and I think that our beliefs ought to conform to our best empirical sciences, and that is a naturalistic view of the world. However, naturalism is defeasible, which means that it is subject to revision. So I could always at some time learn that there's more to the universe than we currently believe. However, on learning such a new physical phenomenon, that would simply be extending naturalism. If God has a nature, or if angels and spirits and souls have natures, then there is a way in which those beings, including my soul or somebody else's soul, or the supernatural realm, relates to itself, as well as how it relates to what we consider the material world. And it may be causally, it may have a causal priority over our material world. However, it would still be simply an extension of naturalism into a quote unquote supernatural world. We would simply learn that there are more laws that we were unaware of. So if I find myself on my death in heaven or in hell, what I will learn is that there is a realm in which there are substances which are not material but immaterial, but nevertheless have natures in which they have causal relations with each other. And that would simply be an extension of naturalism. So I would simply learn that there's more to naturalism than I had previously thought. So it doesn't seem to me supernatural has a great deal of meaning. It just is just an assertion that there's something we don't know. But once we know it, it becomes subsumed under an expanded understanding of what is natural. For me, every argument for the existence of God has failed, and every evidentiary claim and ontological claim has failed, and there's simply no good reason for me to assert that there's any such thing as a God or a deity or a supernatural realm. And so I fall back onto my naturalistic viewpoint, which is, I think, a default position. So I positively assert that there is no such thing as a supernatural realm or a deity until such time as I can be shown otherwise. And that's why I call it defeasible naturalism. It is subject to revision, but for now I have a high degree of confidence that naturalism and therefore a version of atheism is true.
You're at about 4 minutes. Sorry.
I'm done.
Okay, sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much for your opener. We're going to switch it over to our opposing position, the non-affirmative. John, would you or would Praise like to go first?
I'll go first.
You'll go first? All right, sweet. I'll just start on your first sentence. Before you begin really fast, shame on the audience. There are over 200 people watching and not enough likes. Hit the like button, help James out. We love modern day debate. So, all right, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, tonight as we engage in dialogue, I ask the audience, keep in mind we're here to discuss whether or not the classical definition of atheism is reasonable and rational. Specifically, there is no God, period, not just a lack of belief by our opponents. I find it interesting that kind of both of my opponents, but specifically Brenda in the end of her opening was talking about how basically every aspect of naturalism would expand to account for every variable, even post-death. If there was an additional realm of existence, then that would also fall under naturalism and would not be potential evidence for a God. I mean, if at that point, if that's the position you're going to take, I would say there's really no possibility that would ever convince you that perhaps your position is wrong. But to expand on this, let's also keep in mind this is not a debate about a specific God or a variation of any specific religion, which was also something that was pointed out by Amy. No, this is about whether or not it is rational to believe there is no God and there is no external cause required for us to exist, that there is nothing but the purely material and there is nothing beyond this state of existence. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our opponents must explain how their worldview, which is utterly dependent on pure deterministic cause and effect, be an explanation for our existence when they have no explanation for what caused all this determinism to spring into being. They must explain how chaos becomes order, how the abstract becomes actualized, how laws become realized, and how the immaterial becomes material. Now, on our side of the equation, these questions are easily answered, not by magic, but by the insertion of intelligent agency that is in existence prior to the formation of our universe. Obviously, in every other aspect of cause and effect, this is the rational conclusion. And proving how this cause exists has absolutely nothing to do with it being irrational to conclude that there was no prior cause needed, nor that there is overwhelming evidence which makes this not evidence which makes this the overwhelming logical and plausible deduction. We observe this requirement in basically every facet of our lives on a daily basis. Yet, atheists, like our opponents, claim it is rational to insist that in this most fundamental of instances, our very existence of our universe and every facet of life, that somehow this is not needed. Now, our opponents operate that in spite of this being the most rational conclusion, somehow, in spite of the growing evidence this creator entity is required for our existence, that somehow their materialism of the gaps worldview will somehow explain all of this. Now, as you consider throughout the evening, these different arguments, the debates, the back and forth, the dialogue, ask yourself a simple question. If you were presented with adamant arguments that the computer, the phone, the tablet that you are currently using to watch this debate somehow came into existence without the necessity of the intelligent agent, and that was the claim being presented, would you consider the person making this assertion to be reasonable and rational? If they told you it was just natural for this to have occurred, would you think that they were sane? If they told you anything is possible with enough time, would you ever conclude that somehow this would explain the existence of the technology in question? So ultimately, as we ponder all of these different facets of existence, you have to ask yourself, even with an infinite amount of time and an infinite number of universes to work with, you would probably not conclude all of those pieces could create themselves through undirected process. However, it would be entirely rational to conclude that if there was an intelligent agent that could control this, then yes, they could come together.
At about 4 minutes.
In light of all of that, why is it remotely rational to conclude that you, something infinitely more advanced than any piece of technology that you have in your house, your car, or your hands right now, could possibly come into existence without the requirement of the external intelligent agent, in this context, God, which placed all of this possibility into motion? And I yield to my partner.
So thanks, John. Before I get started, I want to voice the fact our opponents decided to take this absurdly foolish topic. Means they are either martyrs for their fundamentalist atheist cult trolling, or prime subjects for a diagnosis of the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, or some or all the above, mainly because rational people understand that the burden of proof is so outrageous for the negation of God, it requires one to be a God to make that claim. It literally requires a perfect infinitude of knowledge of all things. Even probability judgments are nonsensical because the spectrum of fallibility by atheists can be endless. Of course, our opponents will be forced to concede they have a limited understanding of reality. So necessarily, everything that utters out of their mouth regarding the negation of God becomes a parody at that point. Not only is the negation of God comical, but it logically follows God necessarily exists. Here's the thing, atheists assume they are somehow arbiters of what constitutes evidence for the existence of a God. But however, much to their chagrin, they negate themselves as being such. Why do I say that? For one, the non-God position can be reduced to irrationality and abject absurdity because their worldview operates off of fatalistic, naturalistic processes that are unavoidably inanimate, irrational, and unintelligent. Consequently, that means every thought that passes through their brain is determined by a pre-existent chain of physical causes like an analog signal moving through a stereo. This, of course, introduces a plethora of paradoxes. Number one, atheists have nowhere to appeal for rationality or reason. Number two, without free will or any type of autonomy from a physically deterministic reality, atheists have no ability to deliberate or introspect within oneself, what we call a soul, to come to a rational conclusion like God doesn't exist. What I find ironic is that atheists need God to reject him because otherwise, I'd argue there isn't even a you or any personhood in the first place to come to a conclusion. And furthermore, a rational worldview must provide the preconditions of intelligibility. There are conditions that must be accepted as true before you can know anything about reality. The reliability of epistemology is just one example. How do atheists justify they have knowledge of something? How does mere belief move to valid epistemology? Just because atheists believe something is true doesn't make it true. In fact, this is a paradox commonly referred to as non-cognitivism. And if you link non-cognitivism with hard solipsism, this demonstrates atheism overall, much less classical atheism, negates itself from being a valid or logical premise. For the reasons aforementioned shows why God necessarily exists and why atheism is an obtusely irrational worldview begging for a Dunning-Kruger diagnosis. As Psalms 53:1 reminds us, they are corrupt, They have done abominable iniquity, not one is good. Who says there is no God, Elohim? And with that, I concede my time.
Okay, thank you so much, Praise. And John, I didn't get a chance to tell John you had an excellent opener as well, because Praise jumped in before I had the opportunity.
Oh, my bad.
Well, you know, from what the audience always says, my ego is so massive. I just knew it was fantastic. So you didn't have to tell me.
John, you let it
I
roll
think
off
you're
the
pretty
bat.
cool, John.
Yeah, that you guys were all in combined team times under 10 minutes, so that was awesome. I'm glad to add that to our open discussion. Always pleased to do so. Speaking of which, I guess I should chill for James's modern day debate being on podcast form. Modern day debate is now in podcast form. You can listen to it on Spotify, Castbox, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcasts. Usually he say they've invaded the podcast world, so just imagine that's what I said. Let's jump into the open discussion. Do you have a preference on who starts?
I'm open-minded.
Kind of kicks
I
things
have lots
off
of questions.
No preference at all.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I assume since we went first, the other side would go, but it doesn't matter to me.
I'm
But
open-minded.
I don't know what's typical even.
Yeah, if anyone has any kind of pressing, any kind of.
I mean,
pressing-
I'm happy to kick things off. I mean,
Please do.
So I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming both of you operate from a strict materialist perspective, and that there is no such thing as abstract immaterialism.
Abstract. I believe in abstractions, but I only know the material world. I'm open to other ideas, but I don't know.
So is the
What we
abstract
don't
something that
know.
can be materialized, or is it immaterial until it
It's
is
an
actualized?
abstraction. So if you have an abstraction, like I want a sandwich, you can imagine the sandwich, but the sandwich doesn't become real until you go in real life and you make the sandwich.
Okay, so but is the thought therefore immaterial and does not yet exist?
The thought is material. The thought is an electrical chemical signal running through your brain.
So you're saying that the meaning is actualized through electronics or through electrical
Meaning
signal?
is actualized through your muscles. You have to actually physically go and get.
Well, no, but it has meaning before you take that action.
As a concept, it does have meaning.
Right. So that abstract doesn't exist yet in the physical realm, correct?
It's just an abstract. It exists in your brain.
Thoughts are physical.
Can we extract that from your brain? Can you show that?
Yeah.
You could probably hook me up to an MRI scanner, and you can probably watch it going whoop 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 whoop.
No, that just
you
shows
can see
electrical
it.
activity.
Yes, we can get concepts from people's brains. We can even get dreams from people's brains.
You can visualize a dream.
Yes, it's been done.
So you're saying that you can play my dream on a screen.
Not on a screen, but they can derive through scanning. They can derive the content of your dreams. Yes,
They can derive that a dream was occurring, or they can derive that I was on a trip to Mars to go ahead and plant my flag.
Yeah, the content of the dream.
Really?
Yes.
Where's the citation for
Yeah,
that?
because that's like pretty fanciful. I just want to make sure you're making the direct assertion that you, without me telling you what my dream was about, just through a scan, you can derive what the meaning of my dream was and what I was visualizing in my own mind's eye.
Yeah, we know how memories are stored, and we can.
No, that has nothing to do with whether or not you know what data is stored and can actually extract it and represent it in a different form.
We know how memories are stored. So you can retroactively go and retrieve the memory of your dream.
And can you? Okay, so you are stating that we understand the syntax in which that memory is stored, and that we can reconstitute it into a piece of technology that we have in order to visualize the memory.
Yeah.
Please tell. Where is that?
I'd say there's nothing that says we can't do that in
no. Has that been
I'm not
done?
sure.
Has
I'm a
that
little bit
been
different.
done? We have to make a clear distinction here, because that has not been done, and B, that is just showcasing the fantasy land that you're living in. If you think that we have actually been able to reconstruct the visual representation of a memory,
When you're done that, I have a question for you, John. Or if there is no answer.
No, I'm waiting for y'all to back up your claim.
Brenda, did you have a comment on that? I think she's looking stuff up.
So, Amy, can you demonstrate in quantum mechanics that reality is fundamentally physical or material?
I don't really demonstrate things in quantum mechanics. I'm not a physicist.
So why are you making the claim then?
That
reality is fundamentally physical material.
Because that's all the evidence we have right now. That's what all the evidence points to. We could have different evidence.
So what? Okay. What is that evidence then?
What do you mean? What is that evidence?
You just made a claim.
Natural material world, as in if we were to actually, it's actually in the description. So if we were to find your God, our definition of the natural world would expand to include your God. Supernatural is some BS politically correct term.
So you're suggesting that if the God in question has to exist external to the universe in order for it to come into existence, that is now somehow part of it?
If we were to discover the God, it would become part of the natural universe, yes. The supernatural is just a fuzzy word so you can hide things in it.
No, he can simulate this universe if he wants to, this reality. It could be a projection of his mind. This is what quantum mechanics has discovered.
Speaking of his mind, let's go back to the dreams. Is your deity dream?
Can I go back? Can I back
I'd like to stick on dreams. I want to learn about your deity's brain.
Does our deity play chess? I mean, so those are nonsense. Yes. That's a nonsensical question. Does your deity play chess?
Does he? Chess is a real game. I could play chess. Am I stronger than your God?
You're anthropomorphizing our God, and you're already misrepresenting our position.
You got it right. Anthropomorphizing your God. That is exactly what I'm doing. Because if it's just a natural phenomena, then it's not a being, and we're done.
Right.
No, that's begging the question, though. You're assuming that there's no ontology that supersedes this ontology.
Give me evidence.
I just gave you one, quantum mechanics.
Quantum mechanics says what? Quantum mechanics says what about it?
It demonstrates that reality is mentally fundamental.
No, that's not what QM says.
Mentally fundamental. I'd like a physicist to make that claim.
Sure. We actually have observer's effect to demonstrate that. I mean, we have actual principles out there. We've demonstrated through the delay quantum eraser experiment. We have several experiments that validate
everything is a material.
None of that is true. The delayed quantum experiment doesn't prove that minds influence reality. It doesn't prove that.
Yes, again, it does because we have the observer's effect.
No, it doesn't. So I wanted to support my claim about dreams, and I posted a link here in the chat here to Neural Decoding of Visual Imagery During Sleep by Horikawa in 2013. They say our findings demonstrate that specific visual experiences during sleep is represented by brain activity patterns shared by stimulus perception, providing the means to uncover the subjective contents of dreaming using objective neural measurement.
Okay, so again, they do not understand the meaning or have the ability to visualize what it is. All they're being able to do is represent where a dream brain activity is occurring. And
no, that's false.
I'm literally looking at the paper right now, and it is not suggesting they can actually visualize it.
Yeah, the researchers were able to predict what images the volunteers had seen with a 60% accurate rate, rising to 70% with around 15 specified items, including men.
Knowing where a piece of data is being stored has absolutely zero to do with whether or not you can actualize that data. Number one. And number two, as I specified at the beginning of this whole back and forth on this topic, I asked you if there was interaction with the intelligent agent, in this context, the humans, in order to be able to determine what this data was meant, semantic meaning of, et cetera, and you literally just admitted that's exactly what they had to do. So the point I was making about the meaning of the data requiring the intelligent agent in order to be understood and tracked and interpreted, you literally just supported the fundamental point that was being made, which is you required an intelligent agent in order to do this.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. So what they do is they simply put people to sleep. They predict, they ask them on waking what it is they dreamed about, And then the researchers, based on their MRI scans, can predict with 60 to 70% accuracy what it was that they actually dreamed based on the MRI readings.
Okay, did what I just say not compute to you?
Yeah, it didn't. It was irrelevant.
No, your inability to comprehend the point that's being made or the denial of it, which is indicative of the irrationality and unreasonableness of the atheist, is being put on full display here because you're apparently not comprehending the entire point that's being made, which is how would they have known what was possibly going on in that dream state versus awake state if the human with the intelligence was not able to tell them what the first one was?
Well, the way that you validate,
yes or no,
you validate your experiment.
Does it require the intelligent agent to exist prior to? Yes or no?
I'm talking. The way you validate the experiment is you ask the subjects, "What was your dream about?" And then they looked at the data, and that confirms. It's an independent confirmation of them reading the data. So that's how you do that.
So again, was an intelligent agent required both for the implementation of the experiment and for the interpretation of the data?
Intelligent agents are required for experiments. Yes, you made a brilliant point.
For the interpretation of the immaterial data, yes or no?
Hold on. Yeah, this is a misrepresentation of, these are arbitrary thoughts. Mao's put a paper out showing that there's a distinction between arbitrary and deliberative thoughts. So you're attributing these to arbitrary thoughts. So what? So what? We still have deliberative thoughts.
The point is that they can use scans to read off what somebody dreamed during the evening.
What is required for that to occur?
Can I ask
you need scientists. You need scientists to do experiments. Congratulations!
Are there in every aspect of that experiment? Is there abstracts that have had to be actualized? Yes or no?
Abstracts that have to be.
That's just gibberish.
There are abstracts that were actualized too, so it's kind of a 50-50.
Gibberish.
Were there ideas that did not yet exist? The sandwiches that had not yet been made.
This is just gibberish.
No, well, if you're too stupid to comprehend this, then either you're in full-scale denial. I know you're not stupid, so you're obviously just turning off the rational portion of your brain.
The actualized.
So, per the earlier point, which was the sandwich has not yet been made, it's just an idea in your mind, but has not yet come into existence. The same logic applies to the creation of the technology and the thought and the concept of how they might be able to interpret the or posit what was being dreamed about.
But if they can be actualized,
you have to have all this stuff that has not yet occurred yet.
And they can't.
It has not yet occurred. And then they create it. They create something that does not yet exist. Like, are you not comprehending the fact that we have immaterial becoming material?
That's just not the experiment at all. You're not understanding the experiment. What you do is you put people to sleep. They go to sleep. They dream about something. You record that with the MRI. And then you can predict what they dream. And the way you validate that prediction is by asking the subject, what did you dream about?
Okay, the paper that you're referring to literally had a preset of data from scans of people awake when they were talking to people about different things and being able to record where memories of different concepts were being stored in the brain and different brainwave patterns. Then they were doing the exact same thing. They were scanning them while asleep and then doing a comparison of those brainwaves to see if a memory pattern that matched from something that they already knew about.
Yes, that's how neural correlates of consciousness work.
Oh, I understand that. My point is that you literally are not comprehending that they are not being able to actually visualize this image, number one, and the meaning of it. And number two, they would have absolutely zero clue what it meant unless, okay, if there were two people who were, they were quadriplegic and had no ability to communicate, you could scan their brains all day long, awake and asleep, and you'd have no idea what they were dreaming about.
So on that, is your God awake or sleeping? Is he always awake, always sleeping, or is he awake and sometimes sleeping? Does your God, like us, like other agents, beings, sleep? Because we only know that agents and beings
God
sleep.
is not a man lest he lies. So no, he is not a man.
And less sentient and less being each question we ask. So he doesn't sleep. So already he doesn't do something that all sentient beings do.
Now, see, where we're going with this is you're trying to get us to give you an acceptable evidence for our God. What we're talking about is the evidence for the requirements for one to exist in order for us to exist and be having this conversation. The affirmative is on you to prove that the arguments, i.e., are that things such as the abstracts that in every other context require an intelligent agent in order to be executed.
Does your God
There are
have
fundamental
abstracts?
requirements for our existence.
Intelligent
Right.
agent.
And why are they
Does your God have
prescriptive as
abstracts?
well? Why are these abstracts or concepts prescriptive in many cases?
They're descriptive. We're describing
Well, they're
things. And-
descriptive of something
But does your God,
prescriptive.
you just said an agent does these things. Does your agent God make abstractions?
No, they're reflections of his
God has
character,
Of his being?
of
Is
his
that
nature.
what-
They're reflective.
But not reflections
He doesn't
of
need
our
to create
nature?
them.
Not reflections of our nature. We have to have these special rules where we have to have abstractions in our brain, but he gets to be them. He just can't lie because he's truth. So
Praise.
Okay, so
I mean,
we're talking about whether or not God exists. As I specified in my opening statement, we were not going to go down the rabbit hole of specific religions and specific gods. We're talking about the requirement of a
Wait a
external agent required for
Classical
our
theism.
existence.
Classical theism, a
And
being.
you're defending classical atheism. That is the
Yes,
entire purpose
am.
of this.
There's no gods that we can see. No
There-
gods. No.
So
There
now
are-
you have to defend the fact that in every other context, the things that we're discussing right now, just like the interpretation of the brain scans that Brenda brought up, require intelligent agents.
If abstractions
So are
cannot
you
be
suggesting
true
that
and true, then it's negated. You're
It's
saying it has to be true, but you can have abstractions that don't become true ever, right?
Empiricism is an invalid argument anyway. Just because we don't see him doesn't mean that he doesn't exist.
Empiricism
That means
is
that
not
he would be
an invalid
subject.
argument.
He would be subject to our senses. No, we have a God he's transcendent to sensuality.
Like a weak god.
God is transcendent to sensuality.
Yeah, so your senses. Yeah.
What does that
Hearing,
mean?
taste. So he's not subject to sight. He's not subject to human taste. He's not subject to human hearing.
So God can't see, taste, hear, or smell.
No, he's not subject to those things.
Well,
We need to
what does that
understand about
mean?
that.
What does that mean then?
Does
I
he
don't
like
understand what that
wanted
means.
pie? He's like, I love chocolate
It
pie. Can he
means
taste
that
it if he wanted
he's
to?
not subject to this space, time, and material. He transcends that.
Yeah, explain to me what subject to in the sentence you're using means, because I'm not getting it.
So what I'm saying is, if he could be detected through our senses, then he would not be God in the first place.
Sounds pretty weak
Right,
to me.
If
It's
and
actually
much stronger than
the
him.
opposite. It actually shows that he is
Okay.
ontologically maximal being.
Because he's hiding?
that's
weak?
just ontology is not a predicate. So the point is, praise is that if any God, any conception of a God cannot be under any means in principle detected, observed, or described, then that God cannot be said to exist.
And wrong,
I'm
because you have to justify you have a foundation for your senses in the first place. It's circular. It's begging the
do have a
question.
I do have a foundation for my senses.
What is your senses?
What?
So does your senses validate your senses? And can you demonstrate that?
What does it mean for my senses to validate my senses? What does
It's
that mean?
circular. It's begging the question. You need something
No, I
objective to appeal to
I didn't
validate your
claim-
senses.
I didn't claim that my senses validate my senses.
Well, that's
You-
what
And
I was.
Are grounded in biology.
I was asking you to demonstrate that. I haven't heard anything yet.
Well, they're generally reliable.
And
Based
actually,
on what?
sometimes where they're reliable. We actually use science because our senses are wrong
sometimes. Okay.
sometimes.
Here
Why
we
we use
go.
science.
Here we go with the religion of science.
Inductive-
Guarantee this was coming.
Science.
You know, I was going to keep this
just-
more on the philosophical round, but if we're going to go down that rabbit hole, we can. I mean, we can. Are you sure you want to go down this rabbit hole again, Amy?
I do. I just like that you're using the word religion negatively. So we're already off to a good start.
No, I'm saying you're using the science as your religion. That's not a
I
negative.
would disagree. What's your definition of a religion?
That's not. Anyway, do you believe that science explains everything? Yes or no?
No, I think science explains
Do you think
everything.
that science at some point could explain everything?
I think that science is the best methodology we have for uncovering truths about the universe.
Well, what
Okay, so
justifies the scientific method?
What justifies the scientific method? It gets peer-reviewed by sources, by disagreeing people, by sources that either conflict, like people completely disagree. Like Einstein, he tried to disprove quantum mechanics. So he spent all this time doing experiments and ultimately proving quantum mechanics because he didn't believe in it.
So you're saying proofs exist in science now? Isn't that being
Not
dogmatic?
proofs, perhaps is a math term, but we can make empirical discoveries.
So we don't use the scientific method to validate the scientific method. That doesn't work. That's a category error.
So what justifies the scientific method?
That works.
Can I ask, do you believe in the scientific method?
Yeah, I was saying the Christians actually invented that. It's a Christian methodology, and it's undergirded by God. You need God as an epistemology to even justify what's true and false.
Doesn't that undermine empiricism? If it needs a God, then that undermines what the empiricism is trying to do.
No, because you need intelligibility to even justify your empiricism. I'm going to let John jump in here. I don't want to overtalk him.
No, you're fine. I mean, are you... Yeah. What fascinates me about the atheist unreasonableness is they don't actually have an explanation for how the interpretation, the ability to interpret and have these kinds of conversations actually came into existence. And they claim that the term supernatural somehow is this completely esoteric, magical, mystical premise, when you could argue that things that humans do in chemistry or many other facets of science and technology that are not natural, spontaneous actions, you could claim that those are supernatural.
So you think chemistry is not natural?
Did you listen to a word I just said?
But like what? What's an example?
You just said that chemistry is not natural.
No, I said that, okay, in chemistry, there's the term natural, right? So it's a spontaneous action that can happen without external causation actions being required in order for something to occur.
That's different. That's different than the intention.
No, it's the requirement. It's examples of the requirement of intelligent agency being in place in order to...
What you're talking about is a natural reaction as opposed to one in the laboratory.
One that is the result of direction from a non-naturally occurring process as a result of direction by an intelligent agent, which is the entire point.
Congratulations, you've discovered that there are chemical laboratories. Congratulations.
No, I'm proving a point which apparently is beyond your unreasonable mind, which is that there are many, many things that cannot occur without the action of an intelligent agent. And since, at the fundamental level, thousands of these are directly required for life to exist, you are having to suspend this known information from the equation in the relation to your very existence, then claiming that it is extraordinarily reasonable to completely dismiss even the consideration of that intelligent agent being required for those actions to occur in order for you to exist.
So Amy is chomping at the bit.
Can I ask, what do you define as intelligence? Is this intelligence as in it makes choices? Does it have different opinions and views? What makes this thing not just a natural phenomenon?
Counterpoint question would be, do you not have enough IQ points to understand that concept?
I do, and everything about
then why do you ask dumb questions like, what's an intelligence? I mean, in this context,
we can agree God's not intelligence.
If we're talking
about, it doesn't make choices, it has no will, it has no opinions.
Amy,
so
let's try and use our brain for 1 second here, which is, if we're talking about an agent, the existence, yes or no? Hang on, Erica, let me finish the point, please.
Hey,
no, I like it. He's getting closer to my point, so he should say it.
Well, yeah, we'll let John finish this point, and then Amy will get a moment to respond, and then John can respond to that. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay,
so, Amy,
go ahead.
If we're talking about God, which you're dismissing is the agent that could create space, time, life, laws, all these things, and then you're going to question, like, what does intelligence mean?
Yes.
about the entity that would be able to conduct those actions. Like, my point is, if you're actually asking that question, then why are we even having this debate? Because clearly you are either mentally challenged
Thank you.
or
So,
have suspended
ad
rational
homs-
thought in
Ad
context
homs
of
are
this
not
overall debate.
counter argument. Ad
it
homs
doesn't
are
have
not
a
a
brain.
counter argument.
It's not sentient. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't think. It doesn't have choices. But somehow it's intelligent.
That's
How is it
presuppositions,
intelligent?
though. That's your presupposition of how
What
things should
makes
work.
it intelligent? What makes it intelligent in any aspect? Any aspect. A single aspect. A single one. Single one. Anything that's similar to us.
It loves.
It loves. Oh,
Yeah,
please.
God expresses his love. He's proven his love. Calgary would be the number one example of that.
And in the
Hey,
Fifi.
Praise, I have a question. Does God have thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
What is a thought?
I want to go back to that love point. Later.
Intro, he can deliberate within himself.
So deliberation would be a succession of mental states, right?
Sure.
Right. So God exists in time.
Not necessarily, no.
How do you have a succession of mental states without time?
Well, time can be part
You're
of
a
his
brain.
nature. It doesn't. He's not subject to time. So time is a subjective.
Yeah. So how can he have thoughts, which are a succession, which is what time is? How can God have thoughts?
Okay, so let's think about the very narrow-minded, small-mindedness of that question. So, can your brain, you want to put a comparison to us? Okay, fine, intelligence. So can you have a thought and simultaneous other mental actions which are controlling your body?
Yes, it's controlling our heart
Can
rate.
you
and our
walk
thoughts.
and talk at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, then
brain
obviously
does a
more
whole
than one process could be going on at the same time. So
Well,
I'm not
no,
really sure how this is in context of
they're
what is
not-
intelligence, what is thought. You can have
They're
more
not-
than one thing going on simultaneously, even if you are subject to time.
No,
So if you
they're-
are not subject to time, the premise of being able to execute this is not some kind of like pie in the sky
there's-
premise.
There's no
Okay.
such thing as simultaneity.
We'll let Amy go real fast, and then I know Brenda wanted to say something too. And then I heard Praise earlier want to say something, and then back
Yeah.
to John. That's
Well,
all right.
I just really want to ask what really is your definition of love, though? You just said this agent loves us. And that means what?
I would say care, and what do you call it? Someone who cares for someone else. Affection. I'll say affection.
So it does have like thoughts. It is like saying like, "Oh God, I love Amy, and I wish Amy would love me back."
He doesn't need you to love him back, though. He's self-sufficient within himself.
Well, a wish would be not a need.
Goal.
He would prescribe that. Yeah.
Right. So God has thoughts, but he doesn't exist in time. So how can he have thoughts if
Well,
a thought
that's
is a succession of mental states within time?
Well, that's assuming that time is linear. So God could be multidimensional at the same time. So I think you have a sophomoric viewpoint of time, very limited.
No, I don't. Actually, time is simply one dimension, right? It is one dimension.
No, there's actually in.
Hang on, Praise.
Go ahead.
You claim that simultaneity is not possible. What is quantum coherence?
I don't know.
Okay, so what is happening in photosynthesis with the transfer of energy through quantum coherence? So there's no loss of energy. Oh wait, it's
I
every
don't know.
every possible path being taken at the exact same time. Like this
I
is
don't know that.
okay. Well, Google it and then come back and talk to us
I'm
about
talking about
what is simultaneity and what is possible is and if you don't even have an understanding of this, but you're earlier throughout this entire debate so far, both of you all have been dismissing the positions that are being put forth by Praise on quantum mechanics and me in other aspects, but you don't even know what we're talking about. And yet you claim that you're the reasonable ones in something as big as questions about our very existence and the requirements for it.
Well, John, when I say that there's no such thing as simultaneity, I'm talking about special relativity and the fact that there are no simultaneous events. I'm not talking about quantum mechanics. You just completely misconstrued what I said.
Well, no, since there's questions about the whole point of consciousness being the executor of wave function collapse and all sorts of other things are exactly in line with that. They're not separate from, they're directly related to. Is the entire point that's being made.
Wave function collapse has nothing to do with simultaneity. Right? So the question was, can your brain do two different things at once? And I said, there's no such thing as simultaneous actions. There are not.
Okay, and I just proved it.
You know,
I just told you that there were things. And if there, okay,
Yeah.
are there questions about the functions in our brain being our brain basically having the actions of a quantum computer?
Well, I don't know how the brain works. Nobody does. I don't think it's a quantum computer.
Well, there's dramatic. Okay, so do you think that there's enzymes in your body right now that control quantum coherence and quantum tunneling in order for you to exist?
No, enzymes are far too large to have any effect on quantum.
Really? You don't think that quantum tunneling is a fundamental component for your very existence?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well then apparently you need to do some chemistry research, because for respiration, as an example, there is quantum tunneling that's being controlled by enzymes. This is a known fact.
That might be.
So
fine.
in the context
That's irrelevant.
in the context of quantum control and quantum tunneling and simultaneity, photosynthesis, it is a known, proven beyond all doubt that this is a fact. In respiration, this is a known, proven beyond all doubt fact. So the point that I'm making in context of if simultaneity and other aspects of quantum coherence is being proven, shown, and expanded upon in biological systems, and there's dramatic questions about this directly in relation to our brain, then if that is the case, and simultaneity can occur and has been shown to occur in things like photosynthesis, if our brain is operating on the same path, why would it not also be extraordinarily reasonable to conclude that simultaneity can be occurring?
Well, my brain is not doing photosynthesis.
No, your brain's doing things that are way more complicated than that.
Well, I wouldn't say way more complicated.
Yeah,
It's not a parallel.
And I would also like to add
computer.
that the brain is plastic too, that even our own thoughts can change the infrastructure of our brain. So
I think that we've gotten off track. I think we've gotten off topic to be.
Well, that demonstrates it's conscious, fundamentally conscious.
So are you all suggesting that quantum computers could come into existence without intelligent agents?
We are not quantum computers.
No. I asked you a direct question of, do you think a quantum computer could come into existence without an intelligent agent?
It's a good question.
So it's a pretty easy one. Do you think a quantum computer and all the technology and the knowledge the foreknowledge requirement and the understanding of the laws of physics, chemistry, and so forth, could it come into existence if none of that was housed inside the mind of an intelligent agent?
I don't understand. The other thing I want to go to is, like, we were here, or the universe was here for billions of years before consciousness. So the universe can exist perfectly fine without us. We're just on top.
That's an assumption and an assertion.
I'd really
yes,
like
it is.
I really like
maybe because you're a young earther, but I don't know.
No. Actually, I don't care whether it's the universe is 14 billion years old or 6,000. It has zero bearing to whether or not the conscious agent was required prior to.
We have no evidence to think that a conscious agent was required for a universe.
So apparently, you haven't listened to a word we've been saying all night, huh?
I have not heard any compelling evidence so far.
We have axioms that God operates through this reality through mental objects, through the laws of logic.
Exactly mental, because you can't think, right?
No,
you can only have feelings.
They exist in the mind. The laws of logic are abstract objects, and they exist in the mind, but they're not reduced to the brain. Therefore, they're mental. They're immaterial.
Guys, we'll go ahead and pop it back to Brenda real fast because she wanted to recenter.
Absolutely.
I think we've really gotten off topic. So I need to really bring it back. So my assertion is that there are no good reasons for me to believe in any kind of transcendent being or beings. I have yet to hear any compelling evidence that would warrant my belief that such things exist. So I fall onto the default position, which is that those beings do not exist. And that is my positive atheism, says that these gods do not exist until they can be shown to exist. It's a defeasible naturalism. My naturalism is that I assume that the naturalistic sciences are sufficient to describe reality, and our metaphysical beliefs should follow our best empirical sciences, and that's where I'm at. I have yet to hear an argument for why I ought to change, because none of the arguments for the existence of a God or gods are sound and valid, and so I have no reason to change my position.
Okay,
Before they
Brenda,
respond,
Brenda,
Right.
that's atheism.
Brenda, so question for you. Is there any improbability in which you would say that without an intelligent agent, the probability is 0?
That was like word salad.
Okay. Is there anything from an improbability perspective that unless you have an intelligent agent to overcome the improbability, then the probability is 0?
What is an improbability perspective?
Okay. For example, Eugene Koonin, hardcore atheist, origin of life researcher, his own calculations of the improbability of life occurring through undirected process is 1 in 10 to the 1018th power. Anything above 1 in 10 to the 155th, I think it is considered 0 on a universal scale. On the planet Earth, it's 1 in 10 to the 50th. So you have something that is exponentially greater than, from an improbability perspective, than 0, the accepted value of 0 for something happening by chance in the entire universe. What did Eugene Koonin come to the conclusion of was the way to circumvent this in terms of our existence? Well, there must be a multiverse, therefore everything is possible. So it's completely impossible
Good reasons why
in this
they're meeting
context,
them.
but hey, there must be a multiverse, therefore this improbability is actually accounted for.
Number one, that's just an appeal to authority. You're just citing somebody. I have no idea if his arguments are correct. Number two.
Okay, hang on, Brenda. You're obviously missing the point. You're obviously missing the entire point.
Number two, it's the smart people say just from probability. They don't say improbability. That's what the really smart people say. So if you want to pretend to be smart, that's what you would say.
Okay, cool. So did you comprehend the point that was being made?
No, you just made an appeal to authority.
No, I was giving an example of the calculations that have been done directly in relation to the lack of probability in context of our existence without an intelligent agent.
And the multiverse.
So the question is in your worldview, is there any level of the lack of probability which would result in you saying, unless there is an external agent or an intelligent agent that can circumvent this, because the lack of probability comes from there being no, that's all chance. There is no directed process, right?
No. I have no idea what you're talking about. You keep the lack of improbability. I have no clue what the lack of probability means. That's just gibberish.
Yeah.
What does 1 in 10 to the 100th power? What is that an example of?
That's a very large number.
What the 1 in 10 to X power? What does that mean?
It's a very low probability. Yes.
Right. So the point that I am making is there any exponent that can be added to the 10 that in your worldview would mean that the chance of it happening through an undirected random chance process, it could occur?
You're just presupposing that your appeal to authority is true.
No, I'm literally not appealing to authority. I'm literally asking you about your worldview.
Are.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you directly. If there's any number, I'm not putting anybody else's name in this. I'm asking you directly. You are the authority in this question, Brenda. Do you have any number in which you would say, no, that could never happen by chance?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I don't believe your authority that you're appealing to.
So you don't believe in your own mental process?
No, I don't believe in your authority.
So are you admitting that you're too stupid to comprehend this?
No, I don't think your authority.
You literally just stated you don't have the cognitive ability to comprehend this.
No, that's not what I said.
That would prove to you that a deity did not create the universe? Is there anything that'd be like, aha, this is definitely a naturally created world?
No, you're trying to dodge the direct question that's being asked, which your partner is dodging all over the place. So is there any number in which you would say the chance of this happening by chance is impossible?
I don't accept your authority.
Praise, go ahead, buddy. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're dealing with somebody who's like mentally challenged.
So I'd like to kind of jump in here with Brenda. It's like, who are you to, like, we're not subject to you. We're not slaves to your convincibility. Just because you're not convinced of something doesn't mean it's justified or you have any justification for that. It just seems to be driven off of prejudice and bias, and you need to. You haven't shown anything contrary to that.
Well, I just don't accept appeals to authority. That's all.
Who did he? So when did he commit? When did
he appealed to somebody named Kunz or Kunin or somebody like that?
That's not a fallacy, though. No, he never said because he says that it's true. No, that's not how the fallacy works. Even Tom Jump says that.
That is how the appeal to authority works.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. That's literally
I literally removed Kunin from the equation and placed the onus on your brain, on your worldview. I removed Kunin from the equation. I've said this like 10 times.
No,
now.
You didn't.
Yes, I did. I have literally stated I am removing authority from the equation. I am asking you the direct question from your worldview, from your mindset. Removing Kunin and his calculation from the equation. I even used a random freaking number when I was saying, is there anything from a probability or an improbability perspective that you would say, through pure chance, this is impossible?
Yeah, I don't think that the problem of abiogenesis is solved, but I think it's.
You're not answering the question. You're dodging. You're trying to leave an escape door open for you for anything to do with naturalism.
So you're asking me a question about abiogenesis, correct?
I'm literally asking you a math question right now, just to set a foundation of where we're operating. Are we operating from a rational or an irrational perspective?
His point
is there reasonable or unreasonable going on in your brain right now? Is there anything that could ever be impossible by chance? Yes or no?
No.
So everything is possible through chance.
If there is a probability of something happening in 1 to the 10 to the minus 100 power, it's non-zero chance. So it's possible that that event could occur.
Okay, so even if anything above,
let me restate it for you. If there is a non-zero chance of an event happening, right, then it's possible.
Okay, so basically you don't live in a reasonable, rational worldview, given the fact that the mathematicians will literally say, if you're talking about on Earth, anything greater than 1 in 10 to the 50th is 0, and anything above 1 in 10 to the 150th in the universe is 0, then you're saying that it's not 0?
1 in 10 to the 50th is not 0.
It's an abstract. That not being 0 is a pure abstract. There's literally not enough actions. Literally not enough actions have occurred in order to something above
theism?
Right.
No.
Yes, it's immaterial. It's immaterial in nature. That's why it's mental. It's immaterial mental. That's what we're. I want to kind of address. Hold on, real quick. I want to address Amy. She says any direct evidence of God. Yes, the principle of sufficient reason. There you go.
What about it?
What? Wait, how is that addressing my point? I was going to ask, is this being only feelings and not thoughts? Is it just purely feelings, and does it have an organ to process?
That's a logical argument. Principle of sufficient reason. Everything must have a reason or cause or grounds for its existence. Are you familiar
and God
with?
Does not.
Are you? Well, no. It leads to the ultimacy of reality. God is the ultimate grounds for reality.
Or
it's an infinite regress. Principle, sufficient reason. Look it up.
Infinite regress. We see everything in one spot, and we can't go anything further back. That's what the Big Bang is stating. But you then to say that it's a God who created it would be you adding on a presupposition that it's not justified.
Not really. The best inference and explanation supports our position.
So it's just feelings. It's not thoughts. He doesn't have an organ.
I just gave arguments, logical arguments.
So we're all kind of crossing wires just a touch here. Amy, go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then we'll bop it over to Trey.
It just seems like God is
bad.
Yeah, it's a little bit of over talking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I do that too.
No. I just want to make sure everyone in the audience can hear what you guys are saying. So go ahead and great.
It seems like he's there because theists are afraid of death. Generally speaking, they want something to fill in that blank. It's something that created us, and then when we die, it's somewhere for us to go. But it has no reason for a being. This God exists for them, it's not like we exist for the being. The being exists for them. And so it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't give any explanatory power.
Caricature.
He is wildly contradictory.
That's a caricature of our viewpoint. No. And I mean, you have to ask yourself, I could put the ball back in your court. Why does the universe even have such a thing as death? The concept of death. Yeah,
because first of all, death is a living concept. So until things were living, the rock doesn't die. The rock is always going to be a rock. And
so why do humans not die then?
We do die. What are you talking about?
Praise, we do die.
Right, but that's my
Another
point.
That this deity isn't a being.
We should be living. We should be not
living.
Death.
Hi. How are you?
Death is the best explanation from the theistic Christian worldview. Death doesn't work.
Death is not an explanation. It's a failure of your body to keep on replicating because we have moving parts. There is actually good evidence to say that some single-celled organisms could live immortally.
Natural selection should have done away with that a long time ago. It should have made humans immortal.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
It's been here for 4.5 billion years. I think nature has been giving us pretty awesome cards, if I do say so myself.
Oh yeah. Sure. See, you're making these assumptions about reality, and see, we can put the ball in your court the same way like you do with us.
Okay, do it.
Yeah, I just did. Death should be eliminated in your worldview.
And I have one less presupposition than you do, so I am on better ground.
I have a question for Praise. So Praise, you mentioned something that you called the ultimacy of reality, and I would like to know what that is supposed to mean. I don't understand that.
Yes, that is the metaphysically primary grounds of all things, where everything emanates from. It's the ultimate grounds.
God?
Yeah.
Is that God?
Necessarily, it's God. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was in the context of asking us why we don't have an ultimacy of reality, right?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's why your worldview is frivolous and it's decrepit.
So that's just begging the question then. Why don't you have God? Well, because we don't believe in God. That's why.
And it's not even just that.
Your believing power is irrelevant, though. I think that's the problem. It's flawed.
It's literally begging the question, Praise.
No, we can have arguments that demonstrate that God is the metaphysical primary or ultimacy of all things.
What is your argument? Cool. Mike. What's your argument? I'd love to hear one.
Well, number one, it would be the tag argument, the transcendental argument for the existence of God. That's one of them we can appeal to.
It's fallacious. Let's just stick with that.
Prove
it's fallacious.
Demonstrate it.
It commits the fallacy of composition.
We don't know anything that's transcendental.
That's an opinion. You need to show that.
As is your.
I can say bananas. Pink bananas on Mars as a composition. Anything. I mean, you can make anything up you want. You have to demonstrate it.
No, now you understand.
I just did. I showed that the tag fails because it commits the fallacy of composition.
That's a claim, right? But can you explain that? Unpack that.
Do you know what the fallacy of composition is?
Yes, you can't say the parts are the whole or the whole is of the parts. Yes, I know what it means.
Right, and the whole would be the universe, and the parts would be causal interactions within the universe. So the tag argues from
that has nothing to do with that. No, we're talking about the laws of logic. This is ridiculous.
Composition.
This is mental midgetry. No, you need to the laws of logic are immaterial. They're absolute.
Tag.
They're spaceless, timeless. They are exact reflections of the character of God. He's immaterial. He's eternal. He's absolute. He's spaceless, timeless being. So we have grounds for that.
Praise. There are no laws of logic.
Yes, for you to even disclaim it, the contrary. So you can to claim the contrary actually means you affirm them in the contrary. So no, that's illogical to say that.
True.
It's irrational to say that.
There are no laws of logic.
That's irrational. That's irrational. That's nonsense.
No, it's not. There are no rules about how logic must be done.
According to who?
I'd say the laws of logic are just tautologies. They exist, but
Right.
saying it is what it is isn't a deep thought. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is.
The reason I can say that there are no laws of logic is because there are multiple logics that contradict each other. If they were all true, that would lead to a contradiction. Therefore, they can't all be, there is no law of logic. Logic is just a language. Logic is a descriptive language invented by humans. And there's no rule.
They're not dependent on human existence. It's timeless. These objects, entities are timeless.
Does mathematics? Okay, if you want to argue semantics,
abstract.
Does mathematics have immaterial absolutes?
Mathematics is a language invented by humans. It's a language.
So prior to people writing down, having the capacity to write down 1 + 1 = 2, did 1 + 1 always equal 2?
There was never a 1 + 1 = 2.
No.
Humans invented the language.
Okay, so if you're going to go to that extreme of denial of the fundamentals, did the laws of gravity, and laws of physics exist prior to humans being able to write them down?
Yeah, the law of gravity did not exist before humans, but gravity exists.
Good. Yes.
See what you're
so you're saying that there is not just because we're able to determine what the law is and what the answer is, it doesn't mean that the mathematical calculation didn't exist prior to.
Right.
You're confusing the description with the thing described.
If I come up with an equation that doesn't yet exist, did that equation and the end result, which is the correct answer, exist prior to me writing down the equation?
No.
Oh my God,
John!
I don't know. Okay, at this point, how much longer do we have till Q&A?
John,
if we're going to go down this rabbit hole, then we're dealing with people that are so unreasonable that this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we are at about 50 minutes, so we can go about 10 minutes longer and bop this concept around. I know Amy has something she wants to say. Maybe we can
blabbermouth.
By all means.
But you don't think that there's like some holy one, like, or we'll do 1 + 1 = 2. There's not something in the universe going 2. It's 2. It's that these are concepts, and we understand that when we take one of this and we take one of this.
Are you literally a child mentally? Because I feel like I'm talking to a 2-year-old. I feel like I'm talking with a 3-year-old who's just now learning about math.
Insult is not a response.
Does 1 + 1 equal 3? Maybe. Did it ever equal 3, Daddy? I feel like I'm talking to a child.
So I understand. You didn't understand the question. That's
I understood the question and how dumb it was.
Go. You want to answer it, Praise? Is there some sort of like transcendental 2 out there that's like hovering, going 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2?
Great
or is
question.
It a concept that we just use?
No, it's ontological. Two-ness. What does two-ness mean? So it goes beyond descriptive.
Praise, you're using big words that you don't understand. What does ontology mean?
Ad hominems are not arguments.
Well, John feels free, so I'm going to feel free. Praise, what does ontology mean?
It's the nature of something. The study or the nature of an entity or a subject. Yeah.
No, that's not what it means. So what is the ontology of 2?
Exactly. What is two-ness?
Yes, that was the question.
That's something that goes beyond my mind. That goes into something I can't comprehend.
Then why were you talking about it then if you don't comprehend it?
I'm talking about because it necessarily transcends descriptiveness or epistemology. Because that's all you guys believe in is merely descriptiveness. And we have things that transcend that. Ontology debunked.
That's just word salad. That's just gibberish.
But you're just making claims again. Like it's just begging the question claims again.
Yeah. Well, when you say that something literally transcends your ability to understand it, that's literally gibberish. That's what it is.
Well, right. We're tensions are running high in a fun way. But we're going to keep it cool and.
I don't feel tense or
it's been fun.
Back and forth.
We don't have
This is not at my point personal or anything like that.
I just mean fun argument tension, not the bad kind. I know how it goes. We can certainly continue going back and forth again. We've got about 8 minutes until we're technically at the hour mark for discussion. If you guys want to maybe pose like someone wants to pose a final question, discuss for those final 8 minutes.
I would like to defend mine, and I don't know Amy's ideas about abstract objects and laws and things like that. Laws, for instance, like the law of gravity, laws of motion, these are descriptions of perceived patterns and regularities that we perceive in nature. Those patterns and regularities exist independent of us, but the laws themselves are simply our invented language that is intended to describe. So when John says something like, does the law of gravity exist before humans? He's confusing the map for the territory, the description for the thing described. He's reifying an abstract concept. So the concept of F equals ma is abstract. It is conceptual. It exists as a mental state within my brain. However, what it describes, what it refers to, what it points to are perceived regularities and patterns that we see in nature and that we have labeled and given names to. We have conceptualized about them. And so that is why
when you create a game, if you created a game and you created rules for said game, do those rules exist prior to somebody playing the game, or only once they play the game?
Those rules only exist if I have, once I create the game. So if I write down the rules and then somebody agrees, okay, we're going to play the game of chess this way, right? And there was a time in chess before the pawns could not capture en passant, right? They didn't capture in passing. And
I play chess. I understand you. Yeah,
that was a rule. That was a rule that people added to chess, right? So we create. Are
humans adding any actual fundamental changes to the foundational rules that govern the universe?
We're talking about chess, dude.
No, we're talking about existence.
Talking about reification, that's reifying right there.
You're trying to use you're trying to use chess to circumvent my question of do the laws exist when you create the game? Do the laws exist when you create the game, or only they don't exist until somebody actually plays the game?
The rules exist when I create them and somebody agrees to play.
No, somebody has to agree, or they just have to exist, because somebody wrote down the rules for Monopoly before anybody ever played Monopoly, or agreed to play Monopoly, or read the piece of paper that had the rules for Monopoly. So do those rules exist prior to the first person playing the game, or not until they read them and played it?
See, you think you're making a really deep claim here, but you're not.
There's a difference between physics and Monopoly rules, because in
You're missing the entire point.
Are what made us. Those laws are how biology and chemistry are able to emerge. But Monopoly the rules actually not only come from an agent, but they can be changed at any time with an agent. And we have evidence that the agents can change them. We have no evidence that the rule, like physics, was created by an agent or could be affected by an agent.
They're reflective of them. But hold on, I want to respond to Brenda real quick. Can I have a cup of logic or a cup of gravity?
You can have, gravity is the bending of space and time, right? So space-time is a physical
laws come from lawgivers. What is the law of gravity? What is the basis of that?
That's false. Laws don't come from lawgivers.
Yes, they do. Uniformly, they do. Uniformly, they do. You have to go against the uniform way of reality that so not only is intelligence uniform, but also what I just mentioned there is also uniform.
Laws are descriptive, not proscriptive.
You're confusing the laws that govern the universe with the laws that we as humans come together and write down, which can be changed and are different in other countries and all this stuff. The laws of the universe, physics, It's the same.
That's
no matter
so.
you're in
Who
China
cares if
or
it bends
America?
space? You're just describing what it
Okay.
does. I want to know what it is.
Yeah.
Show me the physicality of it. What's the texture
The
of
physicality
gravity?
of what?
What is physics? What
What's
is
the texture of gravity? That's all I'm asking.
Well,
What's the texture
gravity-
of logic?
Gravity is a physical
Some of
force.
those sound like incoherent questions.
This is again
Yes, they are.
viciously circular. It's begging the question again. It's all you do
No.
is beg the question.
And can I ask before we go onward? I think Brenda has to say something, but then I want to say something. Brenda, you had a thought.
Right. Laws, the laws of nature are descriptive. We invent them in order to describe reality.
They're
So
descriptive
laws-
of something prescriptive. I mean, it's an irrelevant
No.
point.
No, that you're wrong. The laws of science are descriptive, not proscriptive.
Okay, what's the texture then? What is the? Well, how much does it weigh? And what does it taste like?
Does God have a
what-
texture? Can I
what
like
is
look up
material?
God?
He's a material like the laws of logic. You keep on spacing this out in way
There
you're
are
trying
no
to
laws.
rationalize.
There are no laws of logic. There's no proscriptive laws of logic. There
They're
are
prescriptive.
No, they're not. They're descriptive.
Okay, what we're writing down in English or whatever language is descriptive of something that is prescriptive. Like this is extraordinarily basic.
Describing.
We are describing something that is prescriptive.
No, we're not.
Wasn't here.
The laws
The
of
force.
nature.
Oh my God.
F
Okay.
equals ma. F equals ma is a description.
Well, per your argument earlier, your logic can be contradicted by other forms of logic. So I'm not sure why you're actually even trying to use this logical argument to defend your position.
There is only logic. But I know that's aimed at Brenda, I think. But there's
Well,
only
there are multiple forms of logical systems.
Right. So
So-
why are you using a logical argument to try and claim that your argument is correct?
Because I'm using the language as it's appropriate to. So I'm using the appropriate language. So if I was describing quantum mechanics, I might use quantum logic to describe it, because the commutative rule doesn't apply in quantum.
Okay, so if we came across a tablet that had the rules for a game, and the only way we were able to read them was to use the Rosetta Stone and to translate them, did those rules exist? Were they prescriptive for the game prior to our interpretation of them?
That's just literally incoherent.
You keep on trying to do it quick and change. Like you try and use one definition.
If
and then
that's
you switch it out.
incoherent,
That's
then-
It's not
rejectionism.
incoherent.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good spot to go ahead and
Let's
Can I have
do
one
that.
last question? One last question.
No,
I'm
I'm done. Let's go to Q&A. This is a waste of time.
I've had fun, but I just want one last question answered and not answer it. Going along the same lines with consciousness and alive and all of this, is God alive? And if so, what is your definition of a living being?
You want to go first, John, or
Alive, per the definition of Amy, which is this whole must be have cells and be reproducing, is a very small-minded perception of reality and existence. So, do I think that God exists? Yes, I think He is necessarily alive from the mortal coil perspective that we currently engage in. No, however, when you think about what is information and its ability to exist outside of the physical, and that if consciousness is what we're actually talking about and is not completely dependent upon the physical, then absolutely, I believe that God is alive, and I believe that God is in a state that is not subject to the rules of matter.
So I like to respond by saying we have evidence from physicians and doctors there's people that have been vegetables in their bed and they've had conscious activity, and they've shown signs of that. So I would say consciousness is the true definition of life or living. And I would even say that where God's realm is, I would say there's such a thing as spiritual living as well. Like you can be spiritually alive. Your spirit's dead or spiritually alive. And I would say only Christ could bring that.
Okay. I said that was my one question. So.
All right. Hey, well, if either groups feel so inclined, you can add or kind of elaborate on your answer in your closing statement. So I'm thinking, as we said at the beginning, 10-minute total closing statement for each team. So approximately 5-ish minutes per person. Is that copacetic with everyone?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll do the same order we did at the beginning. So we'll start with Amy, and then we'll go to Brenda, and then we'll do John and Praise.
And so, yeah, I think we had a good discussion. I doubt, like in most arguments, that either side has really convinced either. But I believe that I made good arguments as to why a being, a conscious, alive being like a god, so far as we can tell, has no reason to exist. And I'm open-minded to being proven wrong in the future. Thank you.
All right, cool. Hey, that was 30 seconds. Piece of cake. All right, Brenda.
It'd be approximately the same for me. So I have yet to hear a convincing argument that would dissuade me from my what I feel is my justified true belief that there is no evidence that compels me to believe in a deity or deities or abstract entity of any kind. And in the face of lacking any kind of sound or valid argument for why I should, then I default to the null position, which is that God does not exist. Thank you.
All right, sweet. 40 seconds. All right, John. You guys feel free to take as much of the 5 minutes of your individual time as you feel necessary. We'll just add the remaining time to the Q&A.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that the result of this debate has been to exemplify, embody, whatever word you want to use, the complete level of irrationality and unreasonableness that is required to come to the conclusion that there is, not only does God not exist, there's no even remotely evidentiary component that might raise the question of whether it's reasonable that God exists in the minds of these two debaters. And I mean, if you're going to argue there is no such thing as the immaterial, that the abstract thoughts are somehow actually physical, but prior to being physical, that nothing actually exists outside of the strictly material premise, then basically let's just suspend all aspects of what it means to exist. Let's forget about doing anything meaningful, because all you are is a bag of chemicals that have no actual value, substance. What you do has no bearing. There is no reason for you to do things beyond that which is purely selfish and beneficial for this very narrow window of time that you exist in the mortal coil. However, if, ladies and gentlemen, it is reasonable that based on the evidence that the things that enable us to live, no other context from a technological perspective, from a mental construct perspective, from an information structuring standpoint, and the actualization of an abstract idea to come into existence, no other context would that be reasonable to have occurred without the actions of an external intelligent agent. If you're going to conclude that that is not a remotely plausible requirement, then I ask you, how are we having this conversation unless that existed? And if you're going to continue to conclude that there is nothing, no matter what the level of improbability that could be considered zero without the actions of an intelligent agent, then you're not operating in the real world of reason, logic, and rationality. And I yield the rest of my time to Praise.
All right, sweet. That was about 2 minutes and 18 seconds. So Praise, go ahead.
So I think we've seen an exhibition of atheism tonight. It's not about intellectual arguments with them. I think they habitually suppress arguments for God. Romans 1 covers this in the Bible. So there it is. We have revelation that even atheists do this. Oh, isn't that interesting? But I would also say we extensively, validated the existence of God. I would even say he's necessary, because without God, then nothing is intelligible. How could you even? What would you appeal to even the preconditions for intelligibility? We need intelligence to even have anything intelligible. God is defined as an intelligence by default. So I think it was just a lot of shifting the goalposts tonight, what atheists like to do, out of unrighteousness. And I think it's a moral issue with them. It's never been about evidence. That buzzword evidence. There's so many. I mean, you could check out John Maddox's channel, and he goes through a plethora of intelligent design evidences. So I'm just saying the arguments are out there that demonstrate that Christianity is true. We have the historical evidence of we could win into that. Jesus Christ himself validates the Christian worldview is true. So I'll yield my time after that, and thank you. That was a great discussion tonight.
All right, sweet. We made it through, everyone. That was very enjoyable to listen to. I may have to go back through it at some point later, because I was busy collecting all the sick super chats and questions that we have for the debaters.
Awesome job on the moderator.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Indeed. Good job, Erika.
Man, I don't even have to do all that much. I just get to sit here and listen to interesting conversations, and I enjoy every second of it. I'm actually very much looking forward to asking some of these questions. We had some really good ones today.
Absolutely.
There are a couple of sick burns for some of our debaters. I think everyone got burned at some point, but I know everyone here is tough. So
Erika, if I don't get burned, I'm going to be disappointed.
If memory serves, everyone got roasted at least once, but I was watching the comments as well. So we'll jump right into it if that's okay with everyone. And we've got a lot for individuals and some for group. So from Mike Billers for $5, Mike says, this one's coming at you, Praise. Good thing Amy made the presentation simple so Praise can understand it with a wink.
Yeah, I'm well aware of these arguments from atheists. I've been dealing with it for years. So I just see a lot of posturing there, a lot of special pleading and misconceptions. I think maybe Amy had a course on Christian theology. Maybe that would help her out immensely. So I recommend that, Amy.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay, so for a Patreon question from Brian Stevens, this is directed at John Maddox. He says, is Maddox okay with saying some of the questions he asked are still big mysteries and that we don't know the answer, i.e. we should continue investigating?
It's a rather general question, but I mean, there's things that you keep looking into if you want to, but you have to also at some point you have to come to the conclusion, like we do in science all the time, that there are certain things that are just not remotely plausible and should no longer be being continued, because whatever the specific path of explanation that we're on does not have a reasonable expectation of answering the question. And that was part of the whole aspect of the probability, because that logic is applied to so many different aspects of science, except in things such as our existence.
All right, sweet. Okay, next up is from Germania, and this is kind of a general statement directed, I suppose, that everyone can have a say if they'd like. Person Y says God exists. Person Z says, I don't believe you. Who has the burden of proof?
The theist in that response, but in this debate, we shouldered the burden of proof. So I'd say normally, and in that example, it's the theist that shares the burden of proof.
So I would actually disagree, and actually I can give you a quote from a philosopher that they actually cite, or he cites, I forget the guy's name, I don't know if I have enough time to do that, but I think his name's Stephen, but he shows that negative is a colloquial for a positive claim. So even if you think that our claims or their claim is a negative, you still have to demonstrate that negative, because even in mathematical theorems, negatives are affirmations of a positive claim.
Yeah, well, my positive claim is that there's insufficient evidence to warrant belief.
And yeah, that's an opinion, but we'll keep on going.
Yeah,
Yes,
no.
it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is an opinion.
All right, John, you want to add anything, or are you passing?
I'm good.
All right. From Sunflower for $5, a little controversy. Would Amy and Brenda take issue with their same level of rigorous and truth-based skepticism being applied to people who believe that they are demigender or NB?
Demigender or what?
NB, so non-binary.
I mean, I have no problem with them. I think there is evidence for gender dysphoria and things like that. That's why I tend to fall in support on the trans issue. I'm not sure where I fall on the ontological claim of it.
By the way, Erika, there are 300, close to 400 people watching, but only 125 likes.
Absolute shame on the audience, I know. I try to roast them whenever I get the opportunity. But still, sometimes they just don't catch up. I can't believe it. And these are the same people who claim to support James. I can't. I'm sure.
It just I'm scandalized.
Completely unreasonable, I think. All right, so next question is going to be from Alice Stockholm. This is for, I guess this would be for our theists. For $5, if they aren't here to prove Christianity, why does Praise think that quoting Bible verses lends any credence to his argument?
I would say, go ahead. You want to speak? Oh, he's talking to me, but I would say that I appeal to the Bible on moral issues. I think that is relevant. I think sometimes moral revelation is important to the non-believer because they have to wonder, how did the Bible predict that this would be happening in our world today? So it's not, I don't go to the Bible necessarily for scientific things and intellectual arguments. I go there merely for moral issues and things like that.
I said, all right, awesome. Okay, next up is going to be from, we do love our pal, Stupid Whore Energy, for $5. She says, experiments are designed to get answers, not maximize the chances of success. This includes the RNA world experiments, my mistake. So this is in reference to the brief moment where we were discussing origin of life.
Well, as I stated, at some point, you have to come to the conclusion that it is not plausible for something to happen without the direction and the controls of the intelligent agent. And in my opinion, that is where we have already run into with things like, without external forces, they can't get more than about 20 nucleotides to bond. That's a problem. And if that is what is being repeated over and over and over again in the lab, in the experiments, that you can't even get close, then at some point you have to conclude, we're able to do this and we're able to put more than this together if we have these additional variables and we do it in a specific format and specific temperatures and our specific controlled variables. That can do it. But without all these things in place simultaneously, then it's not. So at that point, you have jumped from something that is plausible to occur through an undirected process to something that is impossible to occur through an undirected process, but is totally possible with the direction and the actions of the intelligent agent, which circles back around to, if that's a requirement for the fundamentals of life to exist, therefore there must have been an intelligent agent prior to in order for us to exist.
All right, from Mania for $10. They say, if atheism is unreasonable and the God of the Bible is real, how do you justify him commanding the deaths of gay people and disobedient children in the Old Testament? Why did he command/allow these laws? The audience is coming with some controversial questions today.
Oh!
As usual, hang on, Praise. As usual, they want to try and turn this into an entirely different debate than what it was to help the atheists dodge the lack of substance of their arguments. If there's plenty of other debates on those exact topics, go watch them for yourselves.
All right.
Here. I'll add this responded by saying here.
All right. Hey, I'm just the messenger. I'm just reading the
Oh, yeah,
chat.
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't blame it on you.
Good. I'm glad. Listen, you guys know how sensitive I am. I get my feelings hurt so easily. From Spart 344 for 35 ZAR, which, forgive me, I don't know what kind of currency that is. Someone will correct me in the comments and roast me in front of everyone. They say for John Maddox, there are spontaneous and non-spontaneous chemical reactions, but they are all naturally occurring.
Okay, apparently they didn't listen to a word that I was saying and creating the delineation between the two. They need to go watch some stuff on chemistry and look at the delineation of those two. There's actually a great Dr. Hayes had a great there's a great interview over on Standing for Truth where he actually discussed this exact premise in relation to abiogenesis. It was a couple days ago. Go watch it.
What would be an example, John, of a
I
chemical
literally stated, go watch the video and then get back to me. Next
I'm
question.
just asking a question. What would be an example of a
Next question, please.
non-natural chemical reaction?
So as much as I would love to let the dialogue continue, we do have a lot of questions. Maybe we can organize. I would love to moderate a debate between the two of you guys. I imagine that would be an excellent discussion. But I do have to move on. Sorry. From David Childers for $5. This one is a roast for John and Praise. It makes you feel any better for cutting up the question. Sorry, John and Praise. You know the audience.
Yeah.
You guys sometimes. They say, imagine heaven being real and being stuck there with Maddox and Praise for all of eternity.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, here's something for your small-minded atheist worldview, which thinks that we're going to be stuck inside of some little tiny spot with harps and flying around on clouds and crap. Yeah, that's not even remotely what the Christian view of, or at least my view of, my eternal existence is. And if that's your argument and your question there, just really showcases how small your mind is. Go expand it and get back to me.
It's certainly a load off for those of us who don't know how to play harps.
The digs.
From Woody for £2. They just sent a cute little emoji of a little Shiba Inu dog dancing around. We appreciate that, Woody. Thank you very much. For Matthew Steele for $5, a question for Praise. Please justify that anything can possibly exist independently of anything that materially exists.
Yeah, I think I've voiced this probably like 20 times. I mean, several times. The laws of logic. The laws of logic are spaceless, timeless, immaterial. They don't exist in any type of material reality. And I would even ask, I would push back to, what's that guy's name again? I'm sorry.
Matthew Steele.
Matthew, demonstrate scientifically that, or through physics or biology, probably physics, probably the best way, quantum mechanics, that anything is objectively or fundamentally material or natural. I'll be waiting. I'll be looking forward to that citation, but you're probably going to find the opposite because Anton Zellinger, 2007, falsified that. He falsified realism. So there is no such thing as materialism.
You keep citing that, but that's not true. And what's your definition of material?
Physical.
Yeah, what is that? What's that definition?
Great question. I don't know how to answer because I don't believe in that.
So you don't know what physical would be. It would simply anything that has causal relations, wouldn't it?
I never heard. I say that's an equivocation of the definition. I mean, they could look in the dictionary. I probably wouldn't find that definition.
So you think that calling what things that are physical have causal relations is equivocation? Is that what you think?
No, I'm saying you're equivocating the definition of physical. You're redefining it to mean something else.
So sorry, guys, but we do have a ton of super chats, and since that was for Praise, we'll give Praise the last word and continue onward. If it makes you feel any better, Brenda, we do have a question for you right now.
Yeah, so there's a big, huge burden of proof that they have to show that reality is material or physical, and it's been debunked. So I'll end it there.
Okay, next up for Brenda, we have, sorry, I had to scroll. You guys are still super chatting, too generous, making me scroll all the way around all over this Word document to paste all these. Hold on, I just saw it. Oh, here we go. Okay, from Matthew Steele for $5. Question for Brenda. What is your justification for concluding that theism is false simply because it can't be proven true?
Is that I don't have to assume. So the core proposition of theism is that God exists. God is a being. We do not presuppose that any beings exist. The null hypothesis for anything to exist is that it does not exist until it can be shown to exist. And since it's my position that no arguments and no evidence have reached are sufficiently strong to warrant my belief, therefore I am justified in denying that they exist, or a god or gods could exist, until such time as it can be shown that such a being could exist. And that's what I call defeasible naturalism.
If God exists, are humans intelligent enough to determine whether or not God exists?
Maybe not. I don't know.
So even if there's all sorts of evidence for God to exist, is it your position that we're currently smart enough to determine it if there was evidence?
Given all I have is the current level of evidence.
No. I asked you if humans are smart enough, in your opinion, are humans currently smart enough, if there was evidence, are humans currently smart enough to be able to determine whether or not it is evidence for God?
So sorry, guys. We do have to keep moving because we have so many questions. We'll give Brenda, no problem. We'll give Brenda a chance to answer that, and since it was her question, we'll let her in that, and then we'll move on to the next one. The next question, I believe, is angled at you, John, anyway, so if you want, you can kind of add on to that there. So sorry, continue.
On the presupposition that there's sufficient evidence to believe in God, humans are smart enough to conclude that God exists.
Okay, from Mike Billers for $5. And again, I feel this is angled at the theists, but I'm not 100% sure. So if anyone wants to add anything, they can feel free. What is the probability that an ultimately, infinitely everything being exists?
I think I've answered that several times again tonight. I'm saying it's necessarily the case because without it, it would be impossible to the contrary.
Checkbox.
Okay, sweet. The next question is from Matthew Steele for $5 for John.
Apparently we triggered Matthew Steele tonight.
Matthew, either that or they're just feeling particularly generous.
Well, usually it's Stupid Whore Energy gets triggered in my debates, but tonight it's Matthew Steele.
We have a couple of more questions from Stupid Whore Energy, but we're not hearing as much from her as usual. I think she likes the biology debates a bit more. But Matthew Steele's question for you, John, is what established the possibility that theism is the case upon which you base your probability question?
Based on my understanding of the science and the discoveries that have been made of the requirements for me to exist, and looking at it from a logical perspective of what in every other context is required, then extrapolating out that logic leads me to the conclusion that it is the much more probable, rational, and logical conclusion that an intelligent agent was required for these things to exist when other things that are directly comparable and actually more simplistic are proven beyond doubt to require it.
All right. From Cocoa Puffer for $20, to all, life is precious, your soul is eternal. I wish nothing but the best for all the debaters. I hope those who don't know or who don't now may someday find peace in Jesus. I noticed that the moderator was left out of that, Cocoa Puffer. I am hurt. I am deeply wounded. I wish I do feel, though, that the intent of the statement was altruistic.
Well, Cocoa Puffer was just trying to fluff up the debaters and decided that Erika gets enough focus.
Are you sad that you didn't get sufficient fluffing there, John?
I'm feeling a bit dunked on by Cocoa Puffer, but I guess I'll have to recover. From Stupid Whore Energy for $5. All we have to do now, or all we have to do to disprove Kunin, my mistake, is do an RNA world experiment that can prove a translation system. So I suppose that's
that is the entire point of you have to both have created the information, the syntax and the semantics of the information that's going to be translated. Yeah, good luck with that. When you pull that off through an undirected process with no intelligent agent, you are 100% correct. You would have proven that no intelligent agent was required. You're 100% right. Good luck.
And also, before we go on, just I want to say right back for the person before is that I want to agree, life is precious and we should spend every moment on Earth trying to enjoy it and be nice to others.
I think both of those are excellent sentiments. I do agree. From It Starts With Saturn for $5. I believe this is angled at the Theist. Your smartphone has logic gates that utilize quantum tunneling. It doesn't mean your smartphone is a quantum computer. The same goes for the brain.
Okay, so the point I was making about the utilization of quantum tunneling was specifically in relation to enzymes for respiration, and then controlled quantum coherence in relation to photosynthesis. And so the entire point that I'm making, and which directly correlates with the point that there's quantum tunneling going on in your smartphone, is that do you think it is a remotely logical, plausible, or probable expectation that the control of quantum tunneling that is required in your smartphone for it to operate could ever come into existence without an intelligent agent? If the answer is no, how is it a remotely rational conclusion that the same thing that's a fundamental requirement for respiration could come into existence without the intelligent agent?
John, what is quantum coherence?
Next question, please.
Okay, oh, sorry, Brenda. I believe this next question is for everyone, so feel free to kind of add on to that as well. But again, I'm so sorry. We just have so many questions, and I know you guys, I don't want to pull a James. I don't want to take too much of the debater's time up. From Brian Stevens, this is a Patreon question. And I suppose it's directed at everyone. Is my spirit connected to me? If my mind is damaged, does this damage my ability to use my spirit?
Yeah, actually, I can recommend this person to check out a person named Eric Hernandez. He extensively makes great arguments about this. It's sort of like think of a guitar. That if the string breaks, the tunes still work. The tunes still work, but it's damaged somehow. So it does prohibit, I would say, the solar spirit. Just think of a broken, a guitar or something like that, or piano.
All right. Anyone else who wants to add on to that or say anything, by all means, feel free, because that was kind of a general question.
Erika, there are some people asking why I'm wearing a mask. And the reason is, well, the joke reason is I don't want to get a computer virus. Another reason is because I think it looks cool. And the final reason is to encourage people, wear a mask. The virus is real. Get and make sure that you socially isolate and wear your mask. Wash your hands.
Oh, the most important reason is that it's purple, and purple is an excellent color. At least to me, I'm a big fan of purple and blue for that matter. Anyone else want to add on to that question, or are we good to move on?
I'm good.
Good. Sweet. From Mitchell for $5, slamming our atheists here today. If any irrational and reasonable or on the fence to agnostic is listening to this debate, welcome to theism. Atheism is clearly irrational and unreasonable. So coming at you guys.
Always nice to have a fan.
Hey, the audience is keeping it surprisingly more even than they normally are. So, good props for that. They must be in a good mood today. From Patrick Weingartner for $10. This one is actually for me. They ask which skull I have behind me because it's hard to see on their phone. And for those of you who may be wondering, the one they're talking about is that one, and it's Australopithecus afarensis. So that particular one is the species that Lucy is named after. From Mike Billers for $5. Thanks DD and Mr. Batman for substituting when praised and Maddox didn't show. So I think that's a slam on I think they're...
I assume that the skull above your head is fluffy.
Yeah, that's the Smilodon. That's my bemolared Smilodon. It showed up with no carnosaurs and all.
Yeah, fluffy.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. From Patrick Weingartner for $10 at John Maddox, what would be an example of a non-natural chemical reaction?
As I said, I'm not getting into a chemistry lesson with you. Go watch the video on Standing for Truth with Dr. Hayes, where he describes this in detail, directly in relation to the context of which I was using it in relation to abiogenesis. Or I'll have a live stream about this and we can discuss it in much more detail. Next question.
Okay.
Or you could just explain it.
Next question.
Oh,
I got to be up at 3:15, so let's keep going.
Yeah, no problem. So we're almost done. I believe we have 3 more. From Spark 344 for 35 Czar. Again, I apologize. I don't know what that is. From Maddox, they say they're studying chemistry. Actually, specifically, they say, I am studying chemistry, Pumpkin. It's my major. I am well aware of the difference. The currency is South American Rand. Sorry, Spark 344. My mistake. I should have read the end of the sentence first. But so I think that's a slam at you, John.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't really a question. It was more of a slam statement. They say, I'm studying chemistry. It's my major. I'm well aware of the difference. I believe that was in reference to something you said earlier, but I don't remember what it is that you said.
Yeah. Continue.
Okay, so from Mitchell for $5, question for Brenda. If a physical entity in which you can't see is surrounding you, why wear the mask if you can't see it and yet believe? I think that's a virus-related deal.
Oh, because there is evidence that viruses do exist, right? The fact that I cannot see it doesn't mean it isn't there.
Okay, from Matthew Steele for $5. They asked me if I even lift. You would think it would be obvious that I very clearly do lift very often because I'm absolutely cut in my upper body. Deadlift champ, very clearly. And I think that is all that we've got. We do have one more question from Leo Filius. It's not a super chat. Would you guys be all right with indulging that?
Sure.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. This question is for praise. Do you know what, I'm so sorry, I'm not philosophy based, but do you know what Eigen basis is and what happens when an Eigen basis is projected onto an Eigen state of a system?
Nope, I don't know that. I'm going to look into that, so I appreciate Leophilus bringing that up. So that's something I don't know.
That's physics, not philosophy. They're talking about eigenstates.
That's even worse. Yes,
Yes, it is.
I took undergrad physics. That should tell you a lot about where my specialties lie. And I think that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
We survived.
It was fun.
I know. Yeah, I had a great time. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's just the regular back and forth. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta have a good banter. It's all lighthearted. We're all pals here.
Absolutely.
And again, okay, I got corrected by Mike Billers on saying
we're all pals, except I got a few people who might be first up against the wall when the revolution comes.
Okay,
I'll take my chances on who wins that battle.
Okay, I think that's it. If we're ready to sign off, I am ready to sign off as well. This has been Modern Day Debate. Leave a like as you leave the channel and keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Did I get that right? Was that right, Praise?
Yeah.
That's